attack helicopter pilot leading over 275 air combat missions in the Balkans, Afghanistan, and Iraq. He was nominated to serve as the Nuclear Airborne Operations Officer because of his expertise and technical competence. He never lost a man in combat. Brent was the Flight Safety Officer for Bighorn Airways, and last year a gubernatorial candidate for governor of Wyoming. Brent is the chairman of BCR Voter Initiatives Committee. Richard Weber is a retired U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret. His expertise is disaster assistance, unconventional warfare, civil affairs, strategic intelligence, foreign internal defense, and counterterrorism, and counter-narcotics with a focus on removing hostile governments and restoring governments in exile to their proper legal role. Rich taught at University of California, Davis. He was the coordinator for special operations in the Pacific and Asia. After retiring, he became a freight train conductor for BNSF Railway, operating in Canada, Texas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Illinois, Wisconsin, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. Rich is our operations officer. Welcome, Mr. Van, Mr. Weber.
All right, thanks for the seahorse.
Okay, hey folks, thank you very much for having us here. I appreciate the introduction. Again, I am Brent and This is Rich Weber, and we are 2/3 of BCR Voter Initiatives. The C in there is Cheryl Aguilar. Okay, she lives up in Thermopolis. So we are here just to give an update and really a description of what we're doing here. Has everybody heard about this ballot initiative that's circulating around the state? Is there anybody who had it? Okay. Oh, we're good. Good to go. So that means we're doing our job, right? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about this very briefly, and you can find a lot more information on the two sites up here, both Facebook and on the web. And let me grab this over right there. All right. Okay, so the purpose of this, okay, is bottom line is to provide tax relief for qualified homeowners across Wyoming. Okay, why are we doing this? There's a whole bunch of reasons, and there's a lot of different factors on what's caused, this inflated assessed value on homes, etc. There's a lot of different factors that play into that, and we know that. But since 2017, we've seen about a 73% increase across the state. Okay, and on the current trajectory, we're looking at about 170% by 2030. Okay, and quite frankly, this is unsustainable for the folks here in the state. We saw last year that the legislature, and we're not by any means in competition with the legislature, we're actually trying to push this and help this along. But we saw 21 bills get introduced that dealt with tax, property tax, residential, etc., and nothing passed. Okay, nothing came through. So we took that as an action. Okay, and we also saw this that hey, inaction is not an option. Okay, one of the primary things that I had heard campaigning around the state, really there were two: election integrity and property tax, specifically residential. Those were the two top issues traveling all over the state. Okay, so we decided to address this right away based on the results of the last legislative session. Our objectives are threefold. Everything that we do at BCR Voter Initiatives revolves around one word, and that's freedom. Okay, this country was founded upon private property rights, and our objective is to keep folks in their home. And the way to do that is somehow put a box around this tax thing that's going on. Also to pursue accountability. Okay, we digging through all these numbers, all the things that we've been doing. It's like, look, we have to have some sort of accountability at all levels of government. Whether it's a city council, whether it's the commissioners, all the way up to the legislators in the top five, to change this paradigm of putting people first. And then the last one is just being that advocate for the folks. All right, so the process, and we're blessed in this state, okay, because we're one of 24 states, okay, where the people can actually run a ballot initiative as defined in our Constitution, and also in the statutes. You can see right there where it talks about being able to do an initiative. All right, so we took that as a call to action again. It's like, okay, let's do this. So the three of us actually met over a year ago over intensely. Okay, we went through all sorts of different topics on, hey, on what to do. So we ended up with this residential property tax. We framed that. It was a very deliberate process. Okay, despite, you may hear some false narratives out there that, we just threw this against the wall, but it's not. We worked on this thing for over 10 months. About 6 weeks there with the LSO, the Secretary of State primarily, and the Department of Revenue. Okay, we went through the whole process, and then we ran into a conditional certification process, which was finally followed by the final certification process, which was toward the end of this past October. So then we got all those ballot booklets, if you guys have seen them, by the end of October, and we put them all over the state. Okay, it's been just really a fantastic thing. So we decided, though, to write this as an exemption for homeowners. Okay, now kind of going back to the Constitution, our forefathers foresaw, okay, that there could be an impasse, okay, in the legislature or whatever it is, and it's like, okay, we got to make sure that the people are on parity with the governor and with the legislature. So going in there, we in a ballot initiative, we cannot affect the Constitution. Okay, we cannot distribute, apportion, appropriate funds at all. And so this makes it very clear that we don't do that. Okay, all we're doing is just want people to keep their money, and that's all we're trying to do here. So that's why we went with an exception, or an exemption rather. All right. So across the state right now, we have a captain in each county. We have a lot of co-captains out there for the bigger counties, and we have well over 500 circulators out there. Okay, this thing's really, really cooking along over the last 2.5 or so months. So the minimum requirement before we file this, okay, is based on the 2022 voter rolls. Okay, these are registered Wyoming voters who voted in 2022 or have registered since 2022. Who can actually sign this thing, which is roughly about 29,800 or so. And in that mix, you got to have 15% of 16 counties. All right, so that's how all this is going. So assuming we get that, we file this with the Secretary of State. Okay, this goes on the ballot. Okay, then the people have to vote for it here in November of 2025. All right. Okay, just a few facts and figures here for the numbers for the state. Internally, we have about a $10 billion biennium budget. I think a lot of you guys are familiar with that. About $2 billion of that goes to schools. Okay, so the schools are going to be funded by the time this legislative session adjourns through 2026. Okay, Rich will talk a little bit more about this as we get there. We have $27 billion in reserves. Okay, that's spread among about 600 different coffee cans around the state. Okay, so we have a lot of money in there. The last legislative session, the special appropriations, or the $1.8 billion of additional monies. Of that, $1.4 billion went into the rainy day fund, or basically the reserves in the state. Now, this ballot initiative, according to the Department of Revenue, okay, will cost roughly between $137 and $140 million per year. Okay, across the state. That's statewide. Now, looking at that, and that's assuming it becomes law in 2025, okay, it'll take effect 1 January of 2025, okay, and that's roughly about 2.7% of the overall state budget. Remember, it's a biennium budget. All right, now we know just recently, or historically, that the governor called for a 10% reduction right across government to cut spending. So we're still looking for the other 7.3%. Right? This is only 2.7% of that.
Can you hear me? Very quickly, thank you for inviting us here. Realtors are among my favorite people, and I'll tell you why. Is after we left England over property ownership and taxes, you're the people, when people come into the state, that they first meet, and you're the last people that they see when they leave the state. You tie them to the community, you get them into the churches, you get them into the shopping centers, you show them where the schools are, show them where everything is, and you live in the communities with them. And for that, I'm eternally grateful, because much moving around as I did, the railroad and also in the military, realtors saved myself, my wife, and my 6 kids from a whole lot of grief. And I can't thank you enough for what you do for the state, the country, and the communities that you live in. Numbers. I'm gonna go real fast. We've got 12 hours of stuff and we're gonna pack it into less than 15 minutes. Operating funds here in the county were $160 million roughly. The reserves that were, this is 23, were 75 million. Your total budget was about 235 million. In 24, you had a 23% increase, about 55 million went up. Your budget total right now is 291 million bucks. Your budget comprised of about 27 active funds. The largest one is the general fund. 2024 reserve funds, you have about 113 million. I was told this morning that actually is around 142 million. That's the exact cost of what this ballot initiative will be in the whole state. We're talking 140 million, 137 million, depending on what day DOR quotes you the numbers, all the way across the state. That's a lot of money. We don't have a revenue problem in the state of Wyoming. We have a spending problem. We have money running out our ears. And when Brent and I looked at this, when we started trying to analyze this on the campaign trail last year, there was a point where you transitioned from campaign promises to governance. And when we drilled down into the numbers, it did not make sense to us to ask the citizens to pay another 140 million bucks when we had such a high amount in our reserve account. Since November of 22, we have put $2.2 billion in savings. And don't get me wrong, we really like savings a lot, all of us do. We need savings, but at some point you have to say how much is enough. If you got a $27 or $28 billion savings account, and you have a $5 billion operating budget for the state, you look out there and you go, okay, well that's a 5-year supply of money. We have a lot of money and a lot of savings, and there was a lot of room in there to save people. And we're talking about, again, 1% of the buy-in budget, 2% of the annual budget. And so our ballot initiative for this county, if we take 10% out of it, is estimated to be about $29 million. That leaves you, using today's figures, that leaves you with $110 million in reserves. It doesn't affect your operating budget significantly. And then we get to the part where, anticipated increases are coming. This state in 2017 took in $335 million in residential property tax. By the time we got to 2022, it was $535 million in residential property tax. When we got to 2026, 26 figures, we're looking at $570 million, so another $40 million up, and that's with the ballot initiative. That's with this in effect. Without this in effect, across the state, it's gonna go from 533 up to $708 million. We don't have a mechanism in place, a firewall, if you will, at the legislative level in order to cap this. So our reasoning was, we put this bill on the ground knowing that it gets voted in November, won't take effect until 2025, 90 days after the election. It'll serve as a firewall if the legislature is unable to get tax relief or tax reform done in this next session. It'll buy us a little bit more time. All this is a symptom. We're talking about the tax numbers, all these things. We're trying to put a Band-Aid on that symptom to keep people in their homes. When somebody comes up to you, and I don't want to play the violin here and get the sympathy card out, I'm just talking cause and effect. When it takes 7 Social Security checks to keep somebody in their home, that's huge. When you have 8,000 workers leave the state in the age 35 and below category because not just their property taxes went up, but their insurance went up with it. One told me yesterday, their new insurance bill is $1,000 increase over what they had. So in the realtor section, you know what petty is, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. People have to have some predictable way of knowing what they're getting, and people under 35 don't have extraordinary salaries to be able to stay in their homes. So, young and old, people on fixed income are being hit by this. The young people are being hit by this, and the real bottom line is, if you got a $28 billion savings account, and you just got through putting $2 billion in the savings account, $140 million at 1% will keep people in their homes, and we can move on with trying to fix the legislature, as Lori has said, amending the Constitution, updating our tax code, getting 39 straightened out where it's a little bit more fair and equitable. Right now, fair market value is the elephant in the room that's killing everybody, because every time somebody sells their house next door, your property values go up. It's going to cost some adjusting in some of the budgets. We have those 600 coffee cans of money out there. We have appropriations, we have allocations, and we have distributions of funds we're probably going to have to resource in some of the poorer counties like Washakie, maybe Niobrara, Platte, some of the others that run real close to the margins. The more wealthier counties, can afford it easily. But everybody's going to have to roll their sleeve up and figure out how to keep folks in their home. When you get to the budget process, what we've proposed is nothing. We did want to cause a conversation in the state so that these budget issues would be addressed. They were talked about during the 22 gubernatorial campaign. We're still talking about it, and we'd like to continue that conversation until we get it fixed. We keep the lights on in America. We have 50,000 trains. We have 280 million cars. We have 12,000 airplanes that we keep in the sky. We keep the lights on in America. So we're going to be okay. We're not going to lose any money. The people that are in bad times and hard times right now in their homes are not asking for charity. They're not asking for a rebate like Alaska has or anything else. They just need some breathing room and a level playing field, because when they saved and did their 401ks, they didn't anticipate these catastrophic rises in property taxes. The state's going to hit another roller coaster here real soon, and it's going to be a bomb. We threw a grenade in the processes of taxes in the state, but when the Supreme Court gets through in June, right now, 5-6 days ago, they just got the Ninth Circuit case, which is the taxes on unrealized capital gain. The courts have ruled over and over again that this is illegal. You can't tax somebody on money that they haven't received yet. If they rule on this about every state in the nation, unless they handle it like they did Obamacare, we don't know, we have a few more justices on there that think differently now. But when they rule on this, if they rule in the favor of the people that brought this case, there won't be any more taxes on fair market value, because you haven't sold your home, you haven't got that money, you can't tax it. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So I don't know where this is going to land, but it's not just a problem in Wyoming. Montana's fighting it. Colorado just had a ballot initiative that went through. Nebraska's fighting it. Everybody is. And so we don't know where this is going to land, but we need to find two solutions. One is for tax relief immediately to keep folks in their home, lower the threshold. The biggest cause of stress is financial. And anybody's, when you start and you can't balance your checkbook and you can't pay your bills, and one case, a woman's keeps her heat set at 50 because she has to choose between heat and property tax. She can't stay in her home. I mean, this is all over the place. It's not just isolated instances. So we need to get them in there. That's tax relief. We need something fast. And we were hoping that we would be able to get this done this year, but the bureaucratic process is what it is. So we're not going to be able to. 2025 is the earliest anything we're doing is going to take effect. If the legislature picks up something, hopefully in this session, if they can pull a rabbit out of the hat, they can backdate things where we can't. And they can make tax relief immediate state. And the second part of this equation is tax reform, because we need a permanent solution to this, not just Band-Aids on symptoms going forward. And I think some of these constitutional amendments have a lot of merit to it. There's gonna be a lot of discussion, and all your legislators, commissioners, everybody are gonna need to hear from you and everybody else on what your thoughts are on this process, because we don't wanna do knee-jerk reactions. We want a nice, slow, deliberative process that's gonna take care of people instead of growing more government. And we're not anti-government, we're just anti-spending when you don't need to spend. You know, if you ask me, well, we had a lady down in Hartville, commissioner said, well, we might have to cut some services. And she said, if you're gonna make me choose between my home and a road grader, she says, I'm gonna pick my home every time, as county ordinance forbids me from living in a road grader. Well, when you get down there and you talk to Main Street folks, which is where we spend all our time, 198 cities and 23 counties, people come to you with these things, and it's frustrating not to be able to do it. And we understand it. We understand both sides of the issue, from the legislative side, and as Brent said, we picked this bill up because they got gridlocked, and the forefathers saw when you get gridlocked, you can't get legislation off the floor, or you can't get it past the governor's pen. So they gave the people the ability to legislate for the things that they thought was important. And as he showed you earlier, you know, Article 1, Section 1, the power to form and reform this government or abolish this government, all are part of it in our Constitution, rests with the people. You are the absolute authority, we are, and we just need to get that across, that, you know, we're not helpless in this situation. So that's really where we're at. Do you have anything on your family?
Okay, we talked about those. Okay, here's just a couple of minutes here, real quick, folks. What we typically hear is Wyoming is the lowest tax state in the nation. Accordingly, we're 7th highest, depending upon the source, all the way up to 11th highest. And those are the sources there. And then here's a couple of false narratives that we hear all across the state. Again, we've been all over the state with this thing, a lot of radio interviews, a lot of newspapers, etc. But we need to back them. My question is why? You know, let's put a respite on putting money into the rainy day account. Schools will lose funding. That's not true. Okay, they will be funded through FY 26 based on this next legislative session. Essential services will be lost. My question is why? Okay, we have protected. They're all protected by restricted reserves. So what we need to do is, kind of like Rich was saying, roll up our sleeves, cut some of those things that are non-essential out. And then the initiative will cut property tax by 50%. Property tax, as we heard earlier, is this big thing. Okay, residential is just a part of that. And it's different in every single county. But what we've seen is roughly this will affect about 9% of the budgets in each county. And then we continually hear that, whether you want to call it a threat or whatever, that the legislature will raise taxes and or institute a state income tax. And my question is, oh really? Okay, we're in Wyoming here. And really it comes down to, you know, when have they met and fees, taxes, you know, unfunded liabilities, etc., haven't come about. Okay, so bottom line is this is to try to get people informed. Hey, let's vote. Let's get fiscally responsible, etc. The way forward, Rich already talked about a lot of this stuff, and we went through the 2026 down there. But bottom line is, you know, we do need tax reform, and this ballot initiative is simply a firewall. Okay, it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a start, and it was intended to ignite the conversation. And folks, it has ignited a firestorm across the state. It's been great. So that's it for right now. We may have got a little bit over, but
we're gonna hold questions until after, so that Commissioner Malm has a chance to get his presentation in. If you guys will please.